All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening on our post daylight savings time change evening edition of our storytelling event for OCNPN. This is our second storytelling event for the year and being held over Zoom. I'm very excited. My name is Jared Bigman. I serve on the Orange County Nonprofit Professionals Network Board of Directors. I'm also the chair of our networking events committee. Excited to welcome you all today. I know I see a lot of familiar faces, so we're very excited to have you back. If you haven't joined us before at the Orange County Nonprofit Professionals Network, our mission is to inspire, connect, and elevate nonprofit professionals through experiential learning opportunities. So we host a variety of engaging events and conversations to be able to fulfill our mission through those means. I'm very excited to welcome our chair of our storytelling committee tonight, Christian Esteban, and I'll pass things over to him to share a little bit more about the conversations that you all be continuing and participating in this evening. Thanks, Christian.
Thanks so much, Jared, and hi everyone. So good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. As we begin our discussion on burnout and boundaries, I'm petting my little pup over here, so I might get interrupted. Oh, hip, he's already wanting attention. Wendy, I should have taken a page out of your book. But welcome everyone to Burnout and Boundaries, an OCNPN storytelling showcase. I'm Christian, as Jared just said, the chair of the OCNPN storytelling committee. So our committee identifies and empowers nonprofit professionals to tell their success stories, and we create a culture of peer learning and professional development within our sector. So one of the ways we get to do this is through storytelling events kind of like this. So as we head into tonight's story, I invite everyone to think about these two questions. How have you experienced burnout working in the nonprofit sector? And how have you coped with it? Or how have you not coped with it? After tonight's story portion, we're going to jump into some breakout rooms and have a chance to share about how we've experienced burnout and how we respond to it. But first, I'm going to introduce our speakers for tonight. It's sure it'll be fun for our speakers to hear about themselves in the third person here. An experienced nonprofit leader with a passion for building communities by growing partnerships and igniting corporate social responsibility, Wendy Weeks, ladies and gentlemen, is currently the Corporate and Institutional Giving Director at Girl Scouts of Orange County. In this role, she's growing corporate giving through granted sponsorships, helps to secure in-kind gifts, and is working with institutional foundations to increase the courage, confidence, and character through girls throughout OC. Wendy, as many of you know, was formerly the Executive Director of Youth Employment Service, as well as worked for the Home Depot Foundation funding and managing projects assisting our nation's military veterans in 14 states. A Girl Scout since she was 8 years old, she has a passion for community service where she could be found supporting equality and preventing violence against women. So tonight, Wendy's story is going to be shared by a storytelling committee member, Tanya Bhattacharya, who is the founder of Lumos Marketing, a personal branding and storytelling firm for purpose-driven women. Tanya found the world of fundraising and marketing at her alma mater, UCI, while working in the Office of Advancement as a student. And after graduating, Tanya was raised for 12 years in the nonprofit behavioral healthcare field as a fundraiser, marketer, and eventually executive director. And during her fundraising career, Tanya has raised several $1 million in the form of foundation grants, capital support for building projects, and the creation of an endowment. And each of those dollars came from brave conversations and sharing powerful stories, which she believes are key for any endeavor. And we encourage you all to check out lumosmarketing.co. I've got to plug that for you, Tanya. So without further ado, everyone welcome Tanya and Wendy. And Tanya, with that, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christian. And really, I want to just have a moment to say how cool this is for me. And Wendy, I feel like this is a full circle moment. You and I have known each other and been friends for a long time. And I've gotten to see part of your story and kind of walk alongside with you. So I feel really honored to be helping you share your story tonight. So thank you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. I'm so happy to do this with you, Wendy.
Thank you. You've actually, like you said, you've been there through it all. Through it all. So thank you for being there for me.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we can start your story in the beginning. Wendy, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about how you started working in the nonprofit and philanthropy field.
Well, I like to say that I grew up at State Farm. I started there when I was really young, like pretty much right out of high school type of like really young. And I got a chance to learn all of my professionalism, and my community work was all started there. So I feel like that's my base. And I got to learn a lot there. Then I eventually moved on to a large retailer foundation, and that was where I got a chance to, serve in 14 states and helping veterans, and having 14 states all to one person. And that's when I was a funder, so I was the one giving away the money, and a lot of travel was involved. Didn't do as much of the Zoom thing back then. And so lots of traveling was included, which was fun. Loved it all. But as you can imagine, that was, needless to say, where some of this, extended time frame of work started. And it was all fun and, very rewarding. And I just remember there was one time when one of my coworkers, who wasn't in the foundation, she was actually in another department, but she said to me, gosh, I don't know how you're working all of these hours and all of this traveling in and out of airports. And, maybe you should think about setting some boundaries. I'm like, what does that mean? Setting boundaries? And she's like, well, you're not curing cancer. Just shut off your computer. I'm like, well, okay, well, I'm not curing cancer. You're right. But literally there were times where it was up to me whether or not a veteran got to come home after being at Walter Reed for years, going through a recovery process, and literally was told, you get to go home next week. Congratulations, good luck. And oh, but wait a minute, before you go, you need accessibility modifications done to your home. And we won't release you until all of those have been done. Okay, well, then it reaches out to me, and then I'm like, yes, let's do that. Let's get a nonprofit set up. Let's get our volunteers out there to do all of these modifications. And as you can imagine, I'm sure, many of us in the nonprofit industry have done all of the pieces that it takes to put together a volunteer event. And whether you are the nonprofit or you're the funder, I was the one trying to find nonprofits to then, work through them. In 14 states. So I don't necessarily have contacts in all of those states. So again, there's bits and pieces to all bring it together. Yeah, I did. I felt a bit of responsibility about making sure that this person got to come home and be back with their family and in their own bed and in their own community. And that just felt like, what do you mean? You can't tell me I'm not curing cancer. I'm doing something pretty close, almost, not curing cancer. I'm not close, but my point is just that there was a lot of an emotional tie to it, and it really hit home, and it was very definitely hit my heart. So that one was way too difficult to pull away from. But that was how I started my nonprofit career.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know that I think when you and I met, you were no longer working at that initial place, but you had moved on to become an executive director. And one might guess that when you become an executive director, you're the boss, right? So maybe you are able to say no and put up more boundaries, but that wasn't the case, right? So tell me a little bit more about how it felt as you started taking on more responsibilities, even as an executive director.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Well, so I was with a very small nonprofit, and I know some of you work for small nonprofits and might have had some experience in small nonprofit if you're not there now. And, when you work in a small nonprofit, you are everything. You are marketing, you are finance, you are the fundraiser, you are the board development, you are, right? And in the beginning, it was really fun because then I was like wearing all the hats, and I'm getting to create change, and I'm bringing in the money, and I'm creating great partnerships, and it's all just rolling in. But I think the problem there was that I was having too much fun, and I literally was working 12-hour days without even thinking about it. And as I continued on, I realized that this whole 12-hour day thing, and not necessarily remembering that a weekend is supposed to be a time off also, who's thinking, I mean, who is doing that, right? I really hope you guys aren't all doing that, by the way. You take your weekends for yourself, okay? That, not taking time for myself back then and working all of those long hours. I literally had someone tell me at one point, well, your body isn't supposed to run like that, and especially for long periods of time. And I realized that I was starting to feel this extended tiredness and just constantly overwhelmed and constantly feeling like I'm not getting enough done because I'm trying to save the organization at the same time, but I'm having fun, but I'm just working long hours. So I found myself then starting to get frequent headaches, which were turning into migraines. I also was always feeling stressed out. Like I said, just always feeling very stretched, I guess you could say. I started getting muscle tightness everywhere. It was literally my body just saying, well, what are you doing? Wake up. I wasn't myself anymore. I started getting cranky. I was getting snippy, especially toward like the end of my time. And it was just really hard to, I was starting to find ways to have others do different parts of the work. I was able to start hiring employees, for example, and those parts. So those pieces did. And then I also, started finding ways to maybe even have some of the board members going to events for me so that I wasn't out, all night. But, being an extrovert at the same time, I kind of liked being out and I liked having the conversations, and it was about having the engagement like we're doing right now. And I didn't really think of that as work. So I might have started my day early because I met with a board member or a funder or someone like 7 o'clock in the morning, and now it's 9 o'clock at night and I'm leaving that event or, networking opportunity. And I go home and I start all over again. It's still 9 o'clock at night. I should be thinking about winding down. So no, I didn't really pull away. So you're right. That responsibility part really kicked in, Tanya. It was a little more difficult.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing, which I really relate to, is for many of us, this work is fun. I mean, it's more than a job, right? We love the work. We get to see incredible change happen. It makes us feel good. But at a certain point, it may all become too much. And so, Wendy, when did you decide that something needed to change and that you might actually be experiencing burnout? Was there a specific moment that you can pinpoint?
Yes, there were a couple actually. Like the first time doesn't necessarily hit you on the head. It has to be a couple of times later when, at least for me, again, it was having fun and I was trying to deny it. I was then trying to get more sleep. And I use the word trying as an example to remember that if we're only trying, we're not really working on it. We're only trying. And I wasn't successful in my trying and definitely wasn't really working on it. So in that context, I one of the things that started it all was I read some like really brief article. It was on LinkedIn one day and it was about burnout. I'm like, oh, burnout, what is this? What is that all about? Gosh, that really sounds like, gosh, that's totally me, but that's not me. There's no way. I mean, that's the first time literally I thought something. I thought this word burnout was really just something that was made up and that you just say that, or it was like this keyword. And then at one point, I finally got up the nerve to go to a doctor. And that was when I got told the story about, fight or flight, and your body was in this mode for way too long. This is more of something that could be in your body could be doing like you're working for 12 hours or more, on a maybe 1 or 2 days, but not weeks, months, years at a time. And at this point, it had been, 4 or 5 years working like this. And so that was my first aha moment of really making me think about what I was doing as I was working each day and such. But you talk about like a specific time, Tanya, I will tell you, I had a couple. One, I was driving to work one day, and I live in South Orange County, and was driving about 20 miles away, and really felt like when I got on the freeway, all of a sudden I felt like the sides of the freeway just started narrowing in, and my very narrowed vision. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? I must not have gotten enough sleep. And then I kept blinking, and I kept trying to do what I could to, like, why isn't it opening back up? So I started breathing in the car and started doing these exercises while still driving. Don't do that. Not really smart. But anyway, so I did that. I got to work. I was fine. Didn't cause any accidents. But yeah, it wasn't until a couple of days after that I had another incident. And it was turning on my laptop when I got to work. I open it all up. I log in, emails up, and there's like 25 emails, even though I'd finished work at 10:30 the night before. And I'm just like, y'all didn't have to answer my emails. Just, first thing in the morning, what were you thinking? And right, I mean, you all know you work late so you can get stuff done, and then everybody decides to answer you back. I see you all laughing because you know my pain, right? It's our pain. So I opened up my email and I saw all that, and I literally froze. And I mean, froze as in like I couldn't move. And when I came to, if you would say, I realized what just happened and scared the daylights out of me. I'm not joking. I closed my computer, took a couple deep breaths, went for a walk around the block, trying to do whatever I could to get my brain moving again. And I was an idiot, still worked for the day. I left at a very reasonable time, like 3:00, but I worked a day, right? Went home, went for a walk, did some breathing, and it just wasn't there. And Tanya, you were the one that I actually was the first person I said it out loud to. I saw you at an event like 2 days after that, and we got there early or something, and we happened to see each other, and we sit down in the middle of this lobby. It was big and massive, and what's going on? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think there's just too much going on. And I got tears in my eyes when I was talking to Tanya, and literally said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm done. And she's like, wait a minute, hold on. What do you mean? And so we had a conversation, and, I really had to figure out from there, what that was going to look like, and what does done really mean? And does it really, really mean I'm done? Or do I just need to take an extended vacation? What does this mean? So, wasn't too long after that, I think, Tanya, where I met up with my board chair, and I just told them one day, because it was like we were only talking about all this work that needed to be done, and I'm like, I just can't do this. She's like, what do you mean you can't do this? I'm like, no, I mean, I can't do this anymore. And I, right there, over a cup of coffee at a Starbucks, 7:00 in the morning, I just decide I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. And that was my real aha moment, because that was the second time I said it out loud. And it was with my board chair telling her I was leaving. Oh my gosh, what are you, crazy? Never thought I would do something like that. I'm not that person. I'm responsible. Oh my gosh. That's all I could think. So yeah, I think those were quite a few moments, but they all piled up. So yeah.
And you were being responsible. That's the thing. That was you being responsible and asking for what you needed. And I think that's such a, what a brave thing, right? What a brave thing.
Didn't feel brave at the time, let me tell you.
Sure.
Heart pounding.
Well, so what happened after that? So you asked for what you needed. You let them know you were done. You created a boundary. So how did that go? What happened next? Did you start walking the journey towards healing?
So not immediately, I would say, because at the same time, I was still trying to figure out, what did I really mean? I mean, it was just an outburst, and I just can't do this, and over a coffee, and take some time, Wendy, think about this. What do you mean? And I did. I talked to a couple of my friends, and we had a really large event that was coming up. And I said, I need to leave talking to my friends. And I'm like, but isn't the responsible thing to do is to stay on when you have a big event coming up? And they're like, yes. That's another month away. Can't I just leave now? So officially had gone ahead and done the event. I will say that event, I almost didn't feel like I was in my own body during the time. I remember saying hi to everybody. I remember doing a presentation. I remember at one point just literally letting the chairs of the event do their thing, and I wasn't even by their side like I had always done in the past. I literally went and sat down at a table and wasn't helping with anything. So I mean, that's just how it was with, you know, our organization and what we did with the chairs. So yeah, so I went through the event and officially had given my notice and started, you know, that side of closing out there, so that I was determined I was going to start a sabbatical and I was going to take time for me. I was going to figure out what time for me even looked like, because I don't know what that even means. And I started working with different types of people, learning about breathing and learning about how to take time for yourself and walks. And these are all things that I highly suggest doing when you start feeling that bit of being overwhelmed. Just the walking itself actually does a lot for your brain and helps to also calm you. Proper breathing, you know, slow breathing. Let's not do some hyperventilating here, but slow breathing is very, very helpful. And also, I actually got to the point where I had even started working with a coach to help me through the process, because I thought like, well, who am I to be, you know, trying to work on myself when I don't really even know what burnout is. And like Lauren says in the chat, it's not just a buzzword. Well, I was learning all of these pieces. You know, another part I actually haven't shared with too many people. I have some very dear friends on this right now who know about this, and a couple others, but not too long before leaving my organization, I had been diagnosed with having ADHD. So that was all compounded in with having burnout. And I'm pretty sure it was part of it all, because when you have ADHD, you never feel like you're done and never enough. And that in itself was something I also wanted to work on during this time, was to figure out, well, what is this and how do I work with it in a professional setting, because it's not working. So I actually hired an ADHD coach. There are people out there who are ADHD coaches, who knew, you know, and so there are people out there that can help for whatever your decision is on how you want to properly help you with yourself. And there's also, you know, therapists out there that can help. There are some fantastic ones. I do highly suggest in, you know, finding one that works for you and having proper discussions about, almost like an interview, when you're having when you've decided that you're taking the step to go to a therapist. Not only the time, but it's the money that goes along with that. And I really feel that they need to be like your friend who's advising you, and going hand in hand with that, along with the boundaries that come along with that. I started working on boundaries with my coach and figuring out, what does that mean? You know, and in that context, I will say boundaries literally mean that you say you're going to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, and you set an alarm at 9 o'clock to remind you you're going to bed at 10 o'clock. You know, I mean, sometimes you have to do something as silly as that, but especially in the beginning, it's really stages like that you have to do. And there's apps for everything. Let me just tell you, there's an app for that. But yeah, and you know, there's also some really great ways to work with your team members, whether it's a colleague that's actually in the office or your buddy who's on this call right now. You know, it's about talking about it with them and being very upfront and saying, okay, I'm setting my own new boundaries. Today's boundary is I'm going to go to my kid's baseball game. It starts at 6 o'clock. I need to leave by 5:15. Okay, well, why are you here? It's 5:30. Oh yeah, I forgot. Well, I'm just going to finish one more thing. No. You said you were leaving at 5:15. That's 15 minutes ago. You're now late. So you having somebody that's holding you accountable, that is your friend, that is your colleague. This can work. If you're working together, you can then, find ways to do this. And there's also, there's really great ways of running meetings where you can make sure that you're staying on board in the meetings and taking notes and having action items and such. We aren't always made aware of these really great resources that are out there. And again, when you get time to actually slow down and actually get a chance to learn something that is outside of just the doing of getting the mission done and the doing of what touches your heart, and you're really working to get whatever it takes to get the job done type of an idea, because that's who I was. That's how I was raised. Do whatever it takes. And sometimes I do whatever it takes that we all have, or many of us have, is what winds up hurting us. And remembering you is really important. I hope you guys will all start on that. Thank you.
So good, Wendy. I mean, wow, you gave us so many practical tips from the accountability piece, accountability partner piece. And I think you're right. I think that so many of us get into this field because we are used to doing whatever it takes, and we have that mentality. So I thank you so much for sharing your journey and letting us know that if we feel these ways, we have very specific things that we can do to make sure we don't slip further into burnout. So amazing. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank
I
you.
loved hearing your story.
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm honored. And I think at this point, we're going to pass it back to Christian or Jared to actually do some breakout sessions so we can talk about this in smaller groups.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Wendy, really appreciate you sharing. Everyone, if we can give Wendy that virtual round of applause, that was extraordinary. Thank you for being so vulnerable, Wendy. You so rarely believe that the people that you look up to in the sector, they're human. They've experienced all these things, and I can't tell you how encouraging that is to be able to relate with someone who I look up to in that way. So in about 60 seconds, we are going to jump into some breakout rooms, as Tanya mentioned. And in each of the rooms, we're going to have a moderator who has some reflection questions that we're going to be sharing with our small groups. And we're going to take about 20 minutes or so. And I would just encourage our attendees within those small groups to reflect on those questions from your moderators. And you could choose to share, you could choose to not to share. It's completely up to you. But I think the important thing for tonight is to have some accountability partners here and to be able to allow yourself to pause, to hit the pause button and just think about what burnout and boundaries looks like in your own experiences and in your own life. Wendy, as you were sharing, I was thinking about different questions and how they related to my life. It's how do you cope with the understanding of only reaching a portion of the need, for example, that's out there? How do you distinguish between your work and your personal life when those two are tied so closely together? How not only mentally do you respond to stress, but physically? How does that manifest? How is burnout stigmatized in our sector, and also within our sector? How is considering leaving a role tied with feelings of shame or guilt? So there's a lot of things, a lot of things to be thinking about here, and I appreciate you bringing those about. So, so at this time, Jared, I think we're ready to go, but we'll go ahead and jump into our breakout rooms.
Great, thank you. So one of my committee members, Misty, is working with us on our networking events committee as one of our volunteers, and she's going to trigger us into our breakout rooms. Facilitators are at the ready with some great questions to bring some conversation together.
Awesome, here we go. And for some reason, Jared, it wouldn't let you and I go in them because I think we can pop think it's because we're admin, so we can pop in and out.
Okay.
Are you able, do you want me to throw you into a group? How do I,
I can just pop into a couple. That's fine.
okay. Does it give you the option to?
Yeah, it says it has like a join on the right.
Okay, cool.
So I'll go to group 1 since that's a smaller room.
Okay, I'll
Alright.
go to one of the second or the fourth one, and then I'll pop back out and give everybody a few minutes notice because the agenda says 6:47, so that we should end.
Okay, let me just double check that. 20 minutes, 6:47, 5-minute closing. Let's push it up to like 6:44. I think that'll be enough time.
Okay, sounds good.
So maybe like at 6:40, just be like 3 to 4 minutes left, something like that. Do you
Okay.
want to do the broadcast message?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Misty.
No problem.
All right.
Respect your roles in the sector. Hi there, Jared.
Hey guys.
Oh, are you joining us?
I am, yes.
Sweet. Very good to have you. Selah and Wendy are here in this room with us. Selah, Wendy, meet Jared again, our networking events chair. And I was just setting some context, Jared, but we're going to go ahead and jump in. And then Jared, just so you're aware too, Selah, if you could introduce yourself, where are you working one more time, but also include your role and how long you've been there. And then Wendy, if I could ask for you to do the same, and we'll do the same as well.
Yeah, my name is Selah. I work at the Segerstrom Center for the Arts in Costa Mesa. I'm the controller there in the accounting and finance department. Been there for 6 years now. Last month was my 6th-year anniversary. Prior to that, I'm just part of the nonprofit industry. Prior to Segerstrom, I worked in a museum in Balboa Park in San Diego, and before that, I worked for a nonprofit foundation and American Red Cross. So yeah, nonprofit is kind of like my bread and butter. So yeah.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Selah. Congratulations on that 6th-year anniversary at Segerstrom.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds like. And then Wendy, if you could share again your role, where you work, how long you've been there.
Hi, everyone. It's Wendy from the First Tee of Orange County. I'm the executive director. I have been in my role for 2 years. Prior to that, I spent my entire career in corporate America leading sales and marketing teams. And I did happen to be on the board of Youth Employment Service when Wendy was the executive director for 4 years.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Wendy, and for being here. And Jared, if I could ask you to share.
Sure. My name is Jared Bigman. I work at UCI Health. I'm the Associate Director of Development. I work at our hospital complex and also serve on the Orange County Nonprofit Professionals Network as the chair of our networking events committee.
Thanks so much, Jared. And to introduce myself in my other hat, my name is Christian. I am the executive director of Hoya Scholars, which is a small nonprofit in Fullerton, and we have education services for first-gen, junior high, and high school students. I've been in that role for 3 years last month, and that's been quite a journey over the last couple of years. So I have a few questions I wanted to pose the group, and we could either go around or we could just see who might want to answer each question. But in a moment, I'll add the questions to the chat. That way we can also be thinking ahead. But the first question I just wanted to ask is, how does overwork show up in your life? And notice the question isn't, does overwork show up in your life? Maybe this is a little presumptuous the way that I wrote it, but how does overwork show up in your life? Jared, if I could, just because I can, since we're brothers in OCNPN, if I could ask you to share.
Yeah, for me, I think my first role when I entered the nonprofit sector was with the American Cancer Society, and I was doing field development, events, community building, outreach. And when Wendy talked about going to meet with a board member or a volunteer in the morning and then going to a fundraising or a networking event in the evening, that was very much like my life in that role. And it was so much back to back of like the committee meeting from like 7 to 9 on Wednesday night. And then it would go to like 9:45 and I wouldn't get home until after 10 and then race to get home the next morning and go to the next meeting. And burnout was very real. I remember, I worked for a national organization and it was once said that like this role, people lasted 7 to 8 months on average. And that's really poor in terms of retention. The role burned people out. And I was pretty early on in my career. So it was something where I didn't know better. I just knew I was running myself ragged. Everyone else was doing it. And I guess it was okay. But I had lasted in that role for a good year to a year and a half where I said, this is just, I can't do this much longer. My body can't take it. And I think when Wendy talked about some of the kind of the physical manifestations of exhaustion that your body starts telling you, and somebody wrote in the chat, like, your body starts telling you when it's not okay. And that was when I started looking for new jobs because I knew that, for my physical and mental health, this was not sustainable. And I think I got to that point and that resonated with me significantly. And even as I consider future opportunities, it's so much more about what will my life look like as opposed to what will just the new job look like. Even during COVID, you can't compartmentalize a job. You have to think about like the overall picture. So
I would completely agree with that. And there's some things that I want to share just to reflect that from my own experiences. But I do want to go around and Sayla, I'm wondering if I could ask you this question, but if I could preface that with another question for you. You mentioned you've been in the sector for some time. What is it that drew you to the sector and the work that you do? And then if you'd like to respond to, if overwork does show up in your life and in what ways?
Yeah, just being overworked and overburdened, that definitely does show up in my life, just in accounting and finance, that's kind of just the way it is. But drawing myself to the sector, just from college, just being my very first job was American Red Cross, and from there, just hopping around. But yeah, I've survived 6 years at Segerstrom Center, and it's tough work, and I do work long hours. But I do enjoy my job, and that's really the most important part. And getting to see Broadway shows and just various shows, and there's some entertainment perks on top of just working really hard and everything. And we do have our busy seasons during the summer and when we go through audits, and especially through COVID, we had to put people on furlough, and my department was short staffed, so definitely felt that overwork tremendously during COVID, which kind of driven me to move closer to work because after working a long day, you don't want to be stuck on the 405 for 40, 50 minutes. So so that's kind of helped with my mental health as far as I guess how overwork and being just grinding it out for long hours. But that just comes with the industry in accounting and finance. From what I've learned, and just accounting and finance, at least in the nonprofit industry, and I'm sure like other organizations, but accounting and finance is really a non-priority department in in nonprofits. So it would be funding more programs and funding fundraisers instead of just the back office admin people. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as burnout, that's kind of just my story about it. Just kind of, but yeah, just moving to Costa Mesa really helped a lot. It turned my 40-minute, 50-minute commute to under 10 minutes. But I'm also, pushing my supervisor and my boss, saying, hey, I do need help. We need help. So just kind of squeaking the wheel a little bit, and he is backing off and giving more time with deadlines. And I think what I've learned over time is just not to be quiet. I mean, just squeak the wheel, and it's really been helping me out. So
that's great. Thank you for sharing, Sayla. I love how you mentioned, letting your direct supervisor know, okay, yeah, these are sort of my needs. This is what's going to help me kind of take care of myself, so I could do what I'm here to do in the best way that I can. I think that's one of those boundaries that is often overlooked, where we don't necessarily know how to advocate for ourselves in that way, and we think we're being burdensome by doing so, that kind of thing. Going to your supervisor with that need. And then on the other side of the coin too, Wendy, I'm sure you've experienced, as the executive director of First T of OC, having employees come to you with those needs, or needed to be receptive to those. But for yourself, Wendy, what was your journey like at getting to your role, and how have you experienced overwork, burnout?
So I think one of the things that I've really learned a great deal about in the last 2 years is there are so many customers in the nonprofit space. So you have your board members, you have your players in the program, you have your staff, you have donors, you have all these different customers. And as Jared described, as your day progresses, you put on a different hat every single thing that you're doing, and you've got to continue to realize you have limited resources, and one of the things that helps me is I always think about, I've got to keep reprioritizing throughout my day, and I go back to the mission of what our organization is about. And so I keep thinking about, okay, what can I do today that will impact more kids and get my program in front of more kids in Orange County? And so that's what helps me. Trust me, I'm still overloaded every day. In fact, today's been an interesting day. I had a text from a board member at 5:20 this morning, and it was like, really? And so it just really makes you realize you've got to, like Wendy said, you have to force yourself to create boundaries. And so now I keep my phone on by my bed because of my kids. And now it's like, well, I'm just going to keep it shut off, and I'm going to let my husband worry about if the kids call, because I can't get my rest if I've got board members who get up at that hour and start texting me. So I find that very interesting.
It sounds like a near constant role for you. But I love how you articulated. I don't love that you were woken up at 5:20 by our board member here. I love how you articulated there's such a wide range of stakeholders, customers that you have to respond to at each time you turn throughout the day. It's constantly different, and with that you've got to constantly reprioritize how you're responding in those situations. I think we're going to start bringing it in the next couple of moments, but I'd be remiss if I didn't throw this question out there. I know some of us have mentioned these already, but if there are additional boundaries that you yourself set up for yourself, I would love to just be able to share a few more ideas. Jared, I don't know if there are one or two that you commonly run to as far as boundaries, and then we'll all share a couple.
I would say I'm not generally too good at boundaries, but there is one thing I really try hard not to send emails or even phone calls or text messages, for that matter, Wendy, on evenings and weekends. And in that case, morning. I'm trying to be a morning person, but I'm seldom up before 7. And so that's like not really a real big deal for me, but I work with support staff, and it's always been a theme for me that even if I have some pressing matter that evening, I don't rope them into that, because I feel as though it just sets the unfair expectation of like, you need to keep going because I'm going. And even the other night, I needed to talk to my supervisor. I sent her a text at 1:00, and she is so frazzled and busy that she likes to fit in a pocket of time when she can have a quick phone call. And she didn't text me until 6:30 and said, hey, I could talk now, or I could figure out some time tomorrow. So we had a conversation because it worked for her, but it kind of set the precedent that I'm available in the evening, which I shouldn't be, but I took that onto myself. And so I guess that's a boundary that I like to say that I'm really good about, that I'm not.
Thanks for sharing that, Jared. That's I realized a lot about myself here. The idea of you need to keep going because I'm going, with coworkers, and also setting a precedent that you're available when that is your time. Sayla, as we begin to close here, I know you had mentioned moving. I was able to support you. Sharing with your supervisor needs was able to support you. Any other boundaries that you put into place or would consider working on. Oh, Sayla, I think you're muted.
Yeah, as far as, with my supervisor, just the communication is really important. But, he's actually pretty good lately where there is some boundaries now. I do just mention to him how just being overburdened and just nothing is really high priority really. So even with me just being on vacation or needing to go out sick, I used to check my emails during those times, but I stopped doing that. So that's kind of like how I'm slowly transitioning my boundaries. It's just like, okay, yeah, the work is going to get done eventually. It's, I'm on vacation or whatnot. It just is what it is. So I've been more blunt lately, just with COVID and everything. The work will get done.
That's an important mindset to have. And Wendy, as we're closing, any other boundaries you'd like to share?
I have one direct report and I have a one-on-one with him every Monday, and I don't move that for anything. And through the week, I don't try to bother him with just stuff.
So sorry, our breakout ran out of time there. But thank you everyone for sharing who was in my breakout, and for everyone for sharing across the breakouts here. I got a lot of wonderful notes for who are our moderators? Can our moderators raise our hands as I look across it? I see Pamela, Tanya, Christine. I wonder if we can get to Tanya, then Christine, then to Pamela. If there was one thing that kind of stood out in your conversation, it could be a takeaway, a frequent burnout, a boundary that's often used or desired to be used. Tanya, if anything stick out to you?
Yeah, well, the very first thing that pops into my mind, maybe because I really resonated with it, was somebody shared that, we might know what to do, but we don't always apply the knowledge, really integrate that knowledge. Like we know we should get up and take a walk. We know we should do this or that. We know we shouldn't work till after 6, yet there's something like we just don't listen to that voice, right? So that accountability partner piece and really setting up guardrails for ourselves can make all the difference.
That's great. I completely agree with that. Having an accountability partner. I have something to say about that, but I'll see if we have some time in a few minutes. Thank you, Tanya. Christine, anything stand out for you?
Yeah, we didn't want to leave. It was a treat. We had Wendy in our room, so. I think what really stood out is I appreciate Wendy for sharing. We may get overwhelmed with like, yes, we know about all the self-care and everything that we should be doing, but how about starting with just one thing, one day a week? Set an alarm, going for a 10-minute walk throughout your work week. So that is very helpful because I'm one of those persons that kind of like get overwhelmed and like, okay, I'll do it in the future, and you never end up doing it. But start with little chunks, right, Wendy? And the other thing is, we had something come up, Priya shared about.
Christine's been freezing.
Christine, are you there? I thought it was me, but it might be
She'll
Christine.
come back in a second.
Well, as Christine gets her internet connection back, maybe I can share a little bit about what happened in my group. Christine, yeah, you froze for a little bit. So
Sorry, I froze. Anyway, there was amazing things. I'll put it in the chat. My internet's weird.
No worries. Thank you, Christine. Pamela?
So one of the things that really came back and resonated with the one of our groups was that professional help, whether it be finding a therapist or finding a coach, there's a certain maybe stigma or people don't really go that route, but it's so important. And it's something that really resonated with one of our partners, and they're more than happy to maybe even try it. So that was a good one. And then I love the fact that another participant was able to share that they actually put it on their calendar. And if they see that they haven't actually walked in 2 to 3 days, then that's a straight tell that you need to put your shoes on and get outside. So really holding yourself accountable and really knowing when you need that extra support and going for it.
Thank you, Pamela. That's always the hardest part, isn't it? It's that 5-minute window between when you consider doing something like going on a walk and actually getting into that walk. But once you're on that walk, you're feeling great. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did this. It's that 5 minutes about making that decision and following through with that decision. And then I'll just share one thing from our breakout. And before I do that, a couple of quick things as we wrap up. Number one, I'm just dropping my contact information into the chat. As everyone knows, I'm the chair of the storytelling committee, and we got a little bit of glimpse tonight of what it looks like for a committee to identify and empower nonprofit professionals to tell their success stories and how we're able to do that. If anyone is interested in joining our committee, please reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And then the other thing I'll mention is we just have a few more minutes, but if one or two people do have a burning question for Wendy, please feel free to drop them into the chat, and we'll take a moment for that before we leave for tonight. And then, of course, going back to my takeaway from our group, someone in our group, Selah, shared something really I thought was really wonderful about the often overlooked need to advocate for your own needs to your supervisors when it comes to setting boundaries, when it comes to things like working from home or being flexible to go do certain things or taking care of your needs, making sure that your standing meetings actually happen instead of, your supervisor becomes available later in the evening or the nighttime. And then that's when they get back to you and give you a call to answer the questions you might have. And then just in closing, I'll share one more thing just from my end about accountability, which is, Tanya, what you were just mentioning a moment ago. I kid you not, everyone, this is just a fun fact glimpse into my life, but I have a good friend of mine from UC Irvine who is a meditation and life coach. And I actually paid this person, my good friend, to sit down in a room with me for 1 hour every week, and we'd meditate together. And I know it's like the most millennial sounding thing, but I'll be honest with you, I couldn't do that on my own. I couldn't just shut everything off and just sit alone with my thoughts for an hour. And that gives me so much life. And so find an accountability partner. And I would encourage everyone to think of that as a possible boundary setter. And does anyone have any questions for Wendy? Just give one more moment for that. No problem at all. See, Wendy, that was really my fault. I should have put the word out as soon as we finished. Yeah. We're still learning here. We got this. No, but that being said, I'm going to throw it back to you, Jared, so you can close this out.
Absolutely. We at this time don't have upcoming events that are scheduled. We'll be hosting a water cooler conversation, which are our midday breaks that are about 45 minutes. We'll be having our next one in mid-January, and we will resume in-person networking events tentatively. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen with the world this winter, but all things assuming that we're moving in the right direction, those will resume in person in March, which we're very excited about. And if you continue to follow us on social media or on our email list, you will see several calls for volunteers to join our committees within OCNPN. We have our storytelling committee, our networking events committee. Additionally, we have our resources committee, and our chair Haley is here tonight to share resources throughout our community. And I'm forgetting one. Who's not represented?
Marketing?
Marketing, yes. Christine, you're on marketing committee to help get the word out on our future events. So there are several opportunities to join each of our committees and contribute to building a very robust and engaged sector with educational opportunities just like tonight. So we welcome opportunities for you to join and support our work, and hope that you enjoyed our conversation tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you again at upcoming events. Thank you to Wendy. Thank you to Tanya. Thank you to Christian. We really appreciate everyone's time tonight, and hope that you see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wendy, so much. Thank you, Tanya.
Appreciate Thank you, everyone.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thanks, Wendy.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy your evening. Remember, get you time.
Right.
Right. Go meditate.
Meditate. I love it. This is brilliant, Kristen. Brilliant.
It's a huge difference maker.